Right, we're still trying to make heads and tails out of what exactly happened Saturday night. What was your reaction to what we saw there with so many of the All-Stars associated with the Spurs and the Warriors not participating?
I thought it was a shameful maneuver by Steve Kerr. I thought it was an embarrassment to the league, quite frankly. These TV networks. So let's get on three different levels here. First of all, let's talk TV networks that are injecting billions of dollars a year into this game to broadcast these games. This game was probably going to be the most meaningful and impactful game of the regular season. Saturday night showcase for ABC and ESPN, right for everybody to see. And Steve Kerr, who could have very easily sat these guys Friday night in Minnesota to have them ready to play, decided not to do it. Now, there's the second factor, which is quite obviously the fans and the people that spend thousands of dollars to get themselves to San Antonio to be there for this big regular season game. And what do? They get backups versus backups. I can't blame Greg Popovich. Kawhi Leonard's in a concussion protocol. Tony Parker's hurt. LaMarcus Aldridge has a heart murmur. These guys can't play. Steve Kerr, you're choosing this night when you could have rested him the night before? And here's the other part about it. What a horrible strategic move for the Warriors. You got beat opening night by the Spurs by 29 points. You only play them 3 times this season. Okay, you right now are actually giving up a game that makes them tied with you for the #1 seed in the loss column. Okay, you gave up that game. Here's the thing: you give up that game, you give up the tiebreaker. So you're inviting them into a tie and sacrificing the tiebreaker all at the same time when they don't have their 2 best players playing. It is absolute insanity. Then you look a little further at where the Western Conference is, and the fact that if you get the 1 seed, you get a first-round cream puff. You know, right now, if you get the 2 seed, who you get? The Memphis Grizzlies, who have already beaten the Warriors twice this year, and will give them all they can handle in the first round. On no level did this make any sense whatsoever for Steve Kerr. And maybe he thinks he's thumbing his nose at the league and the schedule makers. I think the league is going to have something to say to him about it, even if it's not in public. And in the end, I think he thumbed his nose at his own team and their chances of going to the finals.
Yeah, he was awfully stubborn in trying to make a point, but I wonder if that point was, especially as we discussed last week, Geltzy, about this 13-day, 8-game, I believe there were 3 back-to-backs involved in this 8-game, 13-day span, where they also traveled 10,000 miles. Do you think this was his way to throw it back and say, hey, he was talking about how insane that scheduling was, that he had never seen anything like that in all his years associated with the NBA, and this was his way of trying to prove a point?
I'm sure it was, but it's a stupid way to try to prove a point. He hurt his own team. And here's the thing. The league's trying to take steps to keep this kind of thing from happening. Is he the first team that's ever happened to? I mean, listen, San Antonio takes a huge rodeo trip every year. The Lakers and the Clippers take a huge Grammy trip every year. These are things that are part of the NBA schedule. And, yes, it was a tough stretch for them. And maybe he thought it was an unfair stretch for them. Okay, but here's the bottom line. You had a choice Friday night, tank it in Minnesota. Tank it in Minnesota Friday night so they're fresh to go in there against San Antonio and you give yourself a chance to maintain that tiebreaker. That's the thing. Even if you wanted to sit them one, listen, guys, the rest genie's already out of the bottle. Okay, teams are going to rest players, and I don't care how much Adam Silver goes ahead to extend the schedule. Resting is going to be there. We need to figure out a way how to manage rest. And I'll tell you something I want to see. I'd like to see the commissioner powers expanded a little bit, where he can make a subjective call to fine a coach and or an organization for inappropriate and irresponsible resting that's damaging to the league, because that's exactly what happened here. And the reality is, yeah, could you fake injuries and say all these guys are hurt at the same time? You could, but if the league catches you on it, the fine's going to be a lot worse. I think the league's got to come down pretty hard here, and although there's no rule in place that's going to penalize the Warriors right now, I think there's got to be one in place going forward, because this is an embarrassment to the NBA, and I got news for you. Next TV deal that comes due, this is something your TV partners are going to hold over your head in a big way. This could cost the league hundreds of millions of dollars with this type of garbage.
The other headline that came out of the Warriors weekend was what Andre Iguodala said about Steve Kerr. What did you make of those comments?
I don't know if it was Steve Kerr or Adam Silver he was referring to, Alexa. And listen, I'm careful with this stuff just because, listen, and quite frankly, I'm a 48-year-old white Jewish guy. So some of the verbiage he used, I don't know that I'm necessarily the right guy to say, hey, I'm going to judge this as being inappropriate. I didn't like it, but I don't know that it's my place to necessarily pass judgment on it. With that said, in this particular scenario, Andre Iguodala, he got to soften the message a little bit. He really does. To throw that out there in the face of all this when so many people had the screws put to them by the Warriors sitting these players. And quite obviously, Iguodala felt like he wanted to play, and they're quite angry about the schedule. I didn't think it was the right place for him to go. I didn't think it was the right setting. And with everything else that had gone on, and the other thing is that Steve Kerr put himself in a horrible position. Iguodala put him in an even worse position because Steve Kerr's explanation of it, you got Andre, was a joke. It really was ridiculous. I don't know what else Kerr could have said because of how badly Andre Iguodala backed him into a corner, but it took an ugly, bad situation and exacerbated it exponentially. Just listen, the Warriors are a team that kind of prides themselves on being pretty PR savvy. They were a public relations mess this weekend in every single way.